Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Regroup Show. I am your host, LJ Walker, a real estate investor helping you realize your dreams of owning a home or investing in one. Well, the other day I was in a room on Clubhouse where we were discussing having an Airbnb in Africa as opposed to having one in the United States. And we also shared what were our experiences were as being a guest, as well as those who were hosts. So this here is to just sum up or summarize some of the things that I learned while I was in that particular room. First of all, the term Airbnb is actually not common in everywhere in Africa. There are some people that are just finding out about it. Others, they use a different term. They call it short let instead of Airbnb. But short lets work pretty much the same as Airbnb. It's just that a short let is for a longer term, like a month, 2 months, 3 months, not a day or two or a weekend. All right. Even though, yes, you can find Airbnbs in Africa. They've been around for a while, but again, amongst the local people that live there, not everybody is aware of it. All right. But although not everyone who lives in Africa is aware of it, people who come to visit Africa, many of them are aware of it. The expat community in several countries within the continent of Africa is growing rapidly. So from my understanding, in some places there's a housing shortage. Tiny homes is also something that is being developed in certain areas as well. And many times they take those tiny homes and turn them into short lets or Airbnb. All right. Another thing to note is this, especially when it comes to whether or not you should buy property or rent property. As mentioned in another video when I talked about buying property overseas, when it comes to Africa, there are some countries where as an American you can buy property and be a homeowner, but then there are certain countries that don't let you buy property at all. Some you're not really a homeowner. Sometimes what they have you do is they have you lease the land that the property is on for 30, 50 years, and then that land goes back to the government or to a local. There are certain countries only those people born in that country can actually own land or own property. Those laws are changing in certain countries. In certain countries now, they have it where, let's say you buy a home and you turn it into an Airbnb, they will actually let you become the home owner. So this way you're not just leasing the land, you're becoming the homeowner. And there's one of my friends, she's working with the president of the country, a developer, and the chief tribe of those lands. And they're setting it up where you're a homeowner, you'll get dual citizenship as well. Why? Because they know that everybody is not going to really want to necessarily leave either the United States or Europe, the Caribbean, what have you, and just live in Africa or, be there 24/7, 365 days of the year. they know that people are going to want to use that property and Airbnb it out. So when you Airbnb it out, what does that mean? For them, you are generating income and hiring local people, increasing employment for that country. So because of that, they will allow you to be a homeowner, even though in the past they may not have. Okay, so that is something to explore. I mentioned this time and time again. Laws change, not just here in the United States, but everywhere. Laws change. Things sometimes, because the marketplace has a certain demand, it sometimes forces politicians to change their policies. It forces companies to change their laws, and it forces companies to change their policies. So that is something that's relatively new going down the pipeline. Okay. But that particular program that my friend is working on, from my knowledge, it is only for Americans who are seeking to buy property and the country actually is Ghana, because Ghana before they were like, no, if you're not from Ghana, you can't own property. But now there's some laws changing there because of the increasing expat community that is growing in leaps and bounds. From my understanding, I've never been to Ghana, so I can't say. But Ghana is not the only country. There's Nigeria. I've been told by several people living there that the expat community is growing. And then I believe on the stage there was someone from another country. I think it was Benin or something like that. But yes, these countries are growing in expats. Gambia is another country that seems to be growing when it comes to the expat community. And there is another YouTuber, her name is Julia, in the Gambia, and she is working with the local officials to have those laws changed so that people from the diaspora can come and be homeowners, not just someone who has the lease on the land and for a certain period and then have to give it back. That she's doing her part in making that change. I don't know if she's completed that change. I haven't been on YouTube as much as I used to, as far as like going to other people's videos and what have you, and in particular hers. But I know that the last time I watched her, that's what she was doing. Okay, so bear that in mind as to whether or not you'll be able to rent or whether you'll be able to own. Now, in countries where they do allow you to own, again, you want to look at the price points. You want to see how much Airbnb, how much money are they making? Are they generating? Are they generating enough money for you to be profitable where you can own property? Or is it better to just rent the property from someone else and then Airbnb that rental property out, which is called rental arbitrage? Okay, again, you have to look at the numbers, and remember, always ask when you're looking at the dollar amounts, is it the US dollar amount they're giving you, or is it the local currency of that African country that they're giving you? Because there is a difference in currency exchange rate among the different countries in Africa compared to the United States. So you got to be clear on that. Because this is something that would be overseas, if you are an American, you cannot be shy. you have to ask all the questions that you need to ask, that you want to ask. Don't worry about it being silly, because I'm telling you, if you don't ask whatever question you have, you can lose money. You can lose a lot of money. All right. Even though things, a lot of things might be cheaper over there, costs do add up. They do add up. And then the other thing that you have to realize too is that there's some products and services that might not be available in the country in which you choose in Africa. Because from my knowledge, there's only several countries that are more, some countries are more developed than other countries. South Africa is, and I believe is it Madagascar? Those two are like two of the top countries in Africa that are relatively developed and that are doing well. But the other countries, they may not have products and services. I was watching a video a long time ago where they said even locks, they go to Europe to get those locks. They don't make locks in their country, in that particular country. It wasn't South Africa, it was another country. I can't remember which one it was. So even though Africa is rich in resources, what happens is other countries come and take their resources, produce a product, and then sell it back to them. And sometimes they do it at an astronomically large or high rate. Okay, they don't exactly sell it to them cheap. So even though they get it cheap, get the actual resources cheap from Africa, once they assemble it and make the product, they sell it back to them at a very, very expensive rate, sometimes even more expensive than what they sell to us here in the United States. And even some of the factories that are in some of the factories that are in Africa are actually owned by China. Okay, so that's another situation altogether. I'm not going to go too deep into that rabbit hole, but I will say this. Now, I started an Airbnb, as some of you know, and some of you, whether you know or you don't know, I did buy a number of things from the dollar store, as most other people do. Some African countries don't have a dollar store. Some of them don't even have anything similar to a dollar store. There were other things that I bought from Walmart. And I find that I know that South Africa has Walmart did go down there, but I don't think they are under the name Walmart. They're under a different name. But please know, some countries have something similar. It may go by a different name, but some countries don't have that store at all. Okay? So when you're thinking about buying things to put in the property, just realize that you may want to, find out, have a local boots on the ground person that will help you out a lot. And they can tell you, how much things cost over there. And then you go to the currency converter, and you might find, shockingly, that it is actually cheaper for certain things to buy here and have it shipped or mailed to whatever country it is that you chose. Not everything, but a few things maybe. And then certain things you might not find at all, because when I was speaking to some of the hosts over there, I was like, wow, we here in America, we have timers and we have motion sensors. And it seems as though where she was located, it didn't seem as though she had that in her country, or maybe she didn't know to look for it. I'm not sure, but that's another thing, is that, again, it really didn't sound as though that product existed where she was at. So you will have to, depending on which country you choose, you won't have a choice but to buy it and ship it. And it's better that you do it than to, let's say, have a handyman or a contractor do it, because a lot of times they'll charge you 3 times the price of the actual item plus labor. All right. So that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. All right. The other thing that I could distract is that, because many of them are not familiar with Airbnb, all of their apartments or homes are not listed on Airbnb. They're listed on, travel sites or on local sites in their country when it comes to having people stay. So as you know, if you've ever stayed with Airbnb, you have to pay all of the money up front before you move in. They have the payment system built into their website. But here in the United States, we do have other websites that work similar to Airbnb, but they also don't have a payment system built in. So what you want to do is, if you're going to have an Airbnb overseas, particularly whether it's Africa or not, what you want to do is you want to set up a Cash App, a PayPal, or Venmo, or there's different systems. You want to also see whether or not those payment processing systems exist in that country, because that's another thing, is that the 3 that I listed may not necessarily be accessible in Africa. I forgot, someone did tell me what processing system that they used, that you do over the web. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name of it. When I do, I'll put it in the description of the video on YouTube. However, that's another thing you need to look at, is how are you going to get paid? And you want to have a contract or an agreement set up where the people cannot move in until they pay you. I do not agree with having people move into the property and not paying you at all. They need to pay you something. With Airbnb, typically, you have to pay the full amount up front, right? But with the others that you set up, typically you let people pay every month. But even though you let people pay every month, they still have to pay you before they move in. Security deposit is also something that I charge. I know that a lot of others, people who do Airbnb in the United States and outside, don't, but I highly recommend that you do, because people break things. When a place is not their own, sometimes people will be neglectful and damages will occur that can be very expensive. So that's why you need to collect a security deposit. Then on the day that they are moving out, you go through the property thoroughly, and hopefully you took pictures and video before they even moved in, and then you take pictures and video when they move out. And then this way you can ascertain whether or not to give them their security deposit back and how much, because you want to withhold any damages. You definitely want to do that. See, on Airbnb, the last time I checked, they give up to $10,000 in damages. But even with them, they want you to prove that damages were definitely inflicted. They want you to take pictures. They'll take pictures, statements, and video, right? So that's how they protect themselves. The next thing that was mentioned was solar power. You see, in some African countries, the government is in charge of the electrical power. And there are times when they will shut the power down. They'll shut it off completely. So anything that is connected to the power, such as your AC, your lights, and things of that nature, you won't be able to use it during that particular period. And sometimes they'll shut it down for hours. That's my understanding. So because of this, you need to have solar power. So, of course, if you're renting, you're limited in what you can do. But if you are going to rent, make sure you rent in a building or rent a house where there are solar panels, okay? And if you own the house, make sure you install solar panels. See, here in the United States, it's optional. You don't have to have solar panels. As long as you pay your bills, your electric bill and your gas bill, you're going to have lights, okay? Typically. Now, I have experienced when we've had blackouts, right? And yes, those blackouts did last for hours, but they were far and few in between. There were I think in my whole entire lifetime, I've only experienced 3 blackouts. Okay. They were not pleasant at all. And hearing that, unfortunately, there are certain African countries where this is something that's regularly practiced, like you're going to experience this at least once a year. Oh yes, you need to have solar panels, all right? Especially if you want to have a good review from your guests, because I'll tell you this, when I did the Airbnb, starting it up, it was very, very slow. I wasn't getting the money like everybody else at all. And then finally, I made some tweaks, meaning I put up better pictures, put pictures in certain order and everything else like that. And my first guest came. She gave me a great review. And ever since she gave me a great review, I have nonstop people asking me to stay, wanting to stay here in my place. I've even had some strange requests where they wanted the people that were already there to leave so that they can come and stay. So yeah, your reviews on Airbnb or Traverse Housing, Furnished Finder, Corporate Housing, any of those websites, reviews mean a lot. Okay, so definitely have those solar panels, have that up. And then lastly, the last thing that I want to mention really should be the first thing that I mentioned. Since the expat community is the main community that is making Airbnb and short-term rentals, short listings very popular in Africa, then what you want to know is what countries, number one, are the expats going to in Africa. Once you find the country, find out what city is most popular, and then find out what neighborhoods are most popular. Find out where exactly, once you narrow it down, find out what's nearby. Are there tourist attractions nearby? Are there jobs nearby? You want to find that information out. Once you find that information out, Then you go about saying, okay, this is where I want to buy property. Take your time. Do not rush with this particular process. Learn the process of what it takes to own property there. There are like 57 countries in Africa. I am not about to do research on every single one. So whichever one it is, you're going to have to speak to people over there before you even go there. One of the things that you can do, right? You can go to social media. There are Facebook groups for expats where you can write information. Go to the country expat page. There is Clubhouse. There's also embassies, government embassies. I understand now that every state does not have an embassy for every country. I live in New York, so it's a little bit easier for me. All I have to do is just type in any country, type in embassy after that word, and there's a street somewhere for that particular country. Some of you who may live, I guess, in Missouri, you're not that fortunate. So you're going to have to, after you look at Facebook and Clubhouse, you're going to have to make a trip to either New York or DC and check out those local embassies there. A lot of times the local embassies will have a list of lawyers, and you can, it'll have the name, the phone number, sometimes the address, not always, but they'll definitely have the name of the lawyer, the phone number. Call them. Sometimes it'll also have the email. Call them, send them an email, let them know you're interested in buying property in your country. Can you recommend a realtor? Can you recommend someone who's a boots on the ground person, etc., etc., and take it from there. Sometimes the person at the embassy, they know a lot too, because a lot of times the person at the embassy, they may still have property in that country, or they may have lived in that country at one time or another, and they can also give you advice and give you recommendations and give you referrals to people that can help assist you with either buying or renting property in the country that you're interested in. Okay? So guys, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I had to share with you when it comes to doing Airbnbs in the United States versus doing Airbnbs in Africa. Please note that what I just shared may not just be limited to America versus Africa. The same may be true with America versus, let's say, the Caribbean or the South Pacific. You want to speak to people. It starts with a conversation. Don't be afraid to sound silly, if you will, because sometimes, a lot of times when people say, oh, I got a stupid question, sometimes that quote-unquote stupid question be the smartest question that's ever been asked. Okay? So, yes, don't be afraid. If this is something that you're really interested in, you can do it. It is obtainable. But don't go fast. Slow down. Get all the information that you can before moving forward. All right? So please feel free to share this amongst your friends. Remember, each one, reach one, teach one. Bye for now. Until next time, have a good night.